President Ahmadinejad said that America, he said to America and to all the nations of the world, really ultimately, on Iranian television, quote, "And you, for your part, if you would like to have good relations with the Iranian nation in the future, recognize the Iranian nation's right, recognize the Iranian nation's greatness, and bow down before the greatness of the Iranian nation and surrender. If you don't accept, the Iranian nation will later force you to bow down." Unquote. Do we trust such a man leading the world's most dangerous regime to have his finger on a button that could launch nuclear missiles targeting our children and families? And how do we intend to negotiate with the nuclear Iran, as Senator Obama has suggested, when their jihadist ideology considers Armageddon a good thing? Ahmadinejad himself has also promised to share nuclear know-how with other Islamic nations, quote, due to their need. No wonder the nation of Israel is concerned. Ahmadinejad has said, quote, "Anybody who recognizes Israel will burn in the fire of the Islamic nation's fury," close quote. And has also promised to, quote, "wipe out Israel in a sea of fire." Madam Speaker, Israel has very few options and no margin for error. Iran is currently ruled by a regime that thinks it is the will of God to annihilate the Jewish state. And any responsible Israeli leader understands that a terrorist state like Iran that desires to see Israel erased from existence must not be allowed to obtain or develop a nuclear weapons capability. And for that reason, Israel has said it rejects no options to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. But, Madam Speaker, a nuclear Iran is an existential threat to human peace and freedom everywhere, not just Israel. And the world is derelict to place Israel in the untenable position of having to act unilaterally to protect themselves and humanity from the threat that a nuclear Iran would represent to the entire civilized world. Now, more than ever, Madam Speaker, the United States of America must stand with the nation of Israel against the threat of a nuclear Iran and against those who would see our two nations and all those who love human freedom eradicated from the face of the earth. As a member of the Armed Services Committee and the Strategic Forces Subcommittee, I received many briefings regarding Iran's nuclear ambitions. And now more than ever before, I am absolutely convinced that Iran is a growing threat to the stability of the world and to humanity itself. I am convinced that Barack Obama does not understand this mindset of terrorism. Terrorist organizations like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the terrorist state of Iran have all openly endorsed and supported Barack Obama for president because they understand that he does not understand. Senator Obama has been quoted as saying, "I don't agree with the missile defense system," close quote. He has suggested that we can cut the program by $10 billion. But apparently he doesn't seem to realize that the entire missile defense budget of the United States is only $9.6 billion. He also does not seem to understand the unspeakable danger of allowing this country to be vulnerable to nuclear weapons in the hands of jihadist terrorists. Congressman John Dingell of this body, a supporter of Barack Obama, has said, quote, "I don't take sides for or against Hezbollah or for or against Israel." Madam Speaker, that kind of mindless moral relativism which deliberately ignores all truth and equates merciless terrorism with free nations defending themselves and their innocent citizens is more dangerous to humanity than terrorism itself. And it is proof that liberal Democrats like Barack Obama and John Dingell simply underestimate and misunderstand the enemy we face. Ultimately, Madam Speaker, I believe only two things will prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear power. I believe that those two things are either a direct military intervention on the part of the United States or someone else, or the conviction in the mind of the Iranian leadership that military intervention will occur if they continue to develop nuclear weapons capability. Our greatest hope to prevent war with Iran is to make sure their leaders understand that America will respond militarily before we allow them to threaten the world with nuclear weapons. Madam Speaker, President Ronald Reagan gave an address in 1983 when the world faced a similar threat in the growing strength and nuclear ambition of the Soviet Union. He said, quote, "I urge you to beware the temptation to ignore the facts of history and the aggressive impulses of an evil empire, to simply call the arms race a giant misunderstanding, and thereby remove yourself from the struggle between right and wrong, good and evil," unquote. Madam Speaker, there were those in 1938 who would have deemed the ambitions of Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich a giant misunderstanding. The free nations of the world once had opportunity to address the insidious rise of the Nazi ideology in its formative years when it could have been dispatched without great cost. But they delayed, Madam Speaker, and the result was atomic bombs falling on cities and 50 million people dead worldwide, and the swastika shadow nearly plunging the planet into Sumerian night. Now, Madam Speaker, I think it's time that the world's free people resolve once and for all, for the sake of our own children and for the children of the world and for all generations, that we of this generation will not stand by and watch a similar dark chapter of history be repeated. I actually believe, Madam Speaker, that freedom will ultimately and beautifully prevail. But we must not rest until it does. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
The most important thing that we can do today and every day is to keep God in our heart and mind. We are in the storm of good and evil, right and wrong, loving and serving God and not. I know that there is a bright future during the bad events for those who love and serve God. I do not know if an EMP is going to be the reason for Iran to be able to push to the west, north, and south without the United States or anyone else stopping them until Iran has been doing it for some time. What can we do? Keep praying. Stay close to God. He can inspire you and me as to what to do. We have an election coming up in a few days. Knowing the events happening and can happen and will happen, I am voting for John McCain. Under the events to come, socialistic programs are not going to work, and Obama has more than McCain. Between the two candidates, John McCain is the best person for the job. I urge you to vote for him. We need to become more self-sufficient as fast as we can. We need to get back to the roots of the Constitution and stop getting into debt. We need to start growing better politicians. The vast majority of politicians have sold us out. I would hope that you will join me in making 2009 a year to get the Constitution rooted into our heart and soul. Whether you need to learn, relearn, review, or teach it, whatever it will be for you, I hope and pray that America will commit to making 2009 the year that we learn and take the Constitution back for liberty and prosperity. We need state and local governments to be more fiscal-minded and cut the pork out. America, Jesus said to take the beam out of our eye before we take the mote out of our neighbor's eye. I'm convinced that most of our neighborly politicians have a beam in their eye. However, we must still follow Christ and get the beam out of our eye. We need to know the Constitution. We need to pay for things as we go along and not put further generations in debt for what we want today. We need to be willing to take responsibility and stop looking to government to bail us out. Until the majority of us are willing to show and tell the politicians that we want them to be money smart for us, they will continue to buy their election by promising to give us more that we really can't afford. We have a great work to do as we prepare for the return of our Savior, Jesus the Christ. God bless you, and God bless America.